So that means we're going to get started. We want to thank you for being here. We're here to celebrate Miss Celia Graef for her final presentation. We have 3 questions that we've asked her to answer. They're all along the walls. Who does she aspire to be as a teacher? What cool opportunities is she engaged in to become a better teacher? And how is she going to maximize her student teaching internship at Mary High School with Miss Carly Griffin? We have 30 minutes for that and 10 minutes for questions and answers. So the audience here live face-to-face, be ready to ask questions, as well as the ones online. We'll ask that you put your questions in the chat, and Maya will help translate those for the rest of the audience. With that, Celia, they are all yours.
All right, hello, my name's Celia Graef, and also not clicking forward. Okay, so I grew up outside, climbing on trees and playing in the stream, gardening and raising chickens. I spent a lot of time at Shavers Creek Environmental Center, where I found my love for the outdoors, for entomology, and also for education as I became a leader in training in high school. Though I didn't come from a traditional ag background, my background at Shavers Creek led me to ag ed. So throughout this presentation, I will be talking about the 3 questions that Dr. Curry mentioned. And I'm going to start with the question of who I aspire to be as an educator. So first, I'm going to talk about my teaching philosophy, and this includes 5 core values of mine. So the first one is teaching through inference. To teach through inference, I think it's really important that you teach through questioning, allowing your students to ask questions to lead the content that we're getting through rather than lecturing at students. That's a common theme that you'll hear me talk about in my teaching philosophy. I try to avoid lecturing at all costs to make sure that the classroom is being led by students rather than following standards, but led by students. I also think it's important to reflect on your teaching. So after teaching a lesson, going back in and making any changes based on how your lesson goes so that you can teach it better the next time. Also taking into account student interests. Students will not connect to the information if you don't try to connect to them. So getting to know students and knowing what their interests are so that you can then bring those into what you're teaching. I also encourage movement in my classroom, getting students out of their seats and ideally out of the classroom, especially in an ag classroom when everything is so applicable to the outdoors. As much as you can, getting students immersed in what they're learning is ideal. And finally, teaching through hands-on experiences. Teaching by doing is the best way to learn. So getting students using materials rather than just taking notes. In my classroom, I also have a plan for classroom management. So there are 3 parts to this. And the first part is the procedures that my students will follow. So when they come into the classroom, they're expected to be on time so that we can maximize the amount of learning to happen. They're also expected to complete the bell work. This will be a question posted on the board every day at the beginning of class that they will answer to get them in the mindset of learning in the classroom. They are also expected to have an open mind while they're learning, both for the content that they're learning and also for their peers' opinions and viewpoints so that everyone feels welcome in the classroom. They're also expected to invest full effort though this amount of effort varies from day to day, how much effort you have to invest, it's important that you can give what you can to your learning experience. And finally, leaving it better than it was. It is in quotations on purpose because when I introduced these posters that I have behind me on my first day of teaching in my classroom, we will talk about what it means because it goes beyond just the physical space around you, but also the classroom community as a whole. My students are also expected to follow our shared values. It's not clicking again.
Just click the mouse.
The shared values in our classroom, these include respect, curiosity, integrity, creativity, and collaboration. And they go beyond just the words on the poster. Again, we'll talk about this on the first day of class, what these words can represent. For instance, curiosity isn't just representing asking questions about the content, it's also curiosity between peers, getting to know each other so that collaboration can happen in later classes. Also, curiosity is going into taking initiative for what needs to happen around the classroom and doing it before you're asked. Finally, if students cannot follow our shared values and procedures, there will be repercussions, and these are all conversations, starting with a conversation with me, talking about why we are not meeting expectations and following procedures, making sure that they're clear and they understand what needs to happen, and coming up with an action plan of how to fill in that gap. If this doesn't work, then reaching out to parents and getting some background knowledge to see what I can do better as their educator to facilitate reaching those expectations, and finally, reaching out to administration for extra help if necessary. My ideal curriculum starts with an introduction class that goes over general agricultural, food, and natural resources. And every freshman would take this class in the ag program. Once they complete this course, they will select a pathway, either environment, plants, or food and fiber. And in year 2, they will take the class that goes in their corresponding pathway, so either natural resources, plant science, or food science. And again, in year 3, taking the second class in their pathway, ecology, greenhouse management, or fiber science. And then finally, all seniors will come back together for a capstone course about global agriculture, taking what they've learned in their pathways and putting a global perspective on it. Over the last 2 semesters, I've been in an ag mechanics course where I learned how to electrically wire things and plumb and do some woodworking and welding, most of which I had not had experience in before, but will be certified to teach. So it was great background knowledge to learn. And this is a picture of me and Mackenzie with a garden hose extender that we plumbed a couple days ago. But from this class, I learned how to not only do these things, but then teach it to students. And I came up with a plan for how to build a propagation station. So when I'm student teaching in the spring, I will be teaching a plant science class with a propagation and reproduction unit. And I wanted to create a project that could be applied to one of my actual classes. And so this propagation station gives a spot to put propagated cuttings. So I have a built model of it here. You can all see. You can come see it up here later. And the cost of this project was less than $5 per student, which is pretty economically friendly in a school, which is always nice. Along with our ag mechanics class, we also learned a little bit about like digital drawings and modeling. And so I drew an ideal facility that I would have at my future school. And it's an outdoor classroom that encourages all classes in the school to use it, but especially ag. So there is a circular or a square bench area for a classroom to hold a discussion or some type of learning experience, just like classes outside, and it's shaped in a circle so that it encourages collaboration rather than an amphitheater space that would encourage lecture. The brown over here are raised beds that we would use in various ag courses, but other classes using the outdoor space would hopefully get curiosity sparked from the raised beds and get an interest in the ag program. So it's a little bit of a promotion to the ag program as well. And then there is a pavilion in the middle for a workspace for students. With agriculture, it's important that you follow the 3-circle model, which includes classroom instruction, supervised agricultural experience, which is kind of like an independent study for students to learn more about a specific content area that they're interested in agriculture, and also FFA involvement in the organization. With supervised agricultural experiences, it's at my ideal program, I would have all students have a foundational SAE first in their intro to agriculture class. This would be a supervised agricultural experience project that would introduce them to the concept and also allow them to explore different career pathways before they can expand into research or entrepreneurship style SAE projects in later years. SAE projects are also really important because they teach financial literacy, and we want to make sure that the students coming out of our ag programs are well-rounded and ready for the workforce. It also teaches soft skills, including independence and self-accountability. And it's a unique experience that allows for those skills to develop while also under the mentorship of the advisor. And finally, it allows me as the advisor of these projects to network in the community. I would be visiting these projects because they might not all be held at the school. They might be at the student's home, which allows me to meet the parents and interact with the parents, as well as other community members for future connections that I can bring into the classroom. It's also important to have FFA integration. So I would encourage membership for all students, but also have current members recruit new members, because FFA is an organization that allows students to grow into strong leaders and be ready for careers in agriculture in the future. One way that they do this is through career and leadership development events. And these allow students to compete in specific content areas, and also leadership events like public speaking. So encouraging students to sign up for these events and competitions are, again, working on building those soft skills and preparing students for careers. I did not come from a traditional FFA background. I wasn't in FFA in high school, so my first experiences with it was at Penn State. But I participated in the fall leadership conference by teaching a couple lessons with the state officers up there in the corner. I also went to national convention with another school near where I'll be student teaching, which was cool because I learned how to take students on a multiple day field trip halfway across the country, and learned a lot from that. And then finally, this summer, I was working in Colorado and got to go to Colorado State Convention, which was different from Pennsylvania State Convention, but the same scale. So it will be interesting to then compare that state convention to future Pennsylvania state conventions that I go to with students. Also important with an ag program to market your program so that people know it exists and want to come be a part of it. And the best way to do this is through your students. Students make the best sales teams. And if they like your program, they're likely to talk about it and promote it to other students when signing up for classes. But we can take this a step further by building it into our curriculum. So I have a marketing unit in my floral design class where students will be designing videos and flyers for a sale of flowers around the school, but kind of taking that concept and scaling it up to your whole program to promote your program as a whole. Over here is a video that I made as a recruitment video for my cooperating center. And it's on YouTube if you want to dig around and find it. But ideally, students would be making these videos to promote the program to their peers. Ag is also heavily based in the community surrounding it. So community integration is crucial for your program. It's important to to take advice from your occupational advisory committee, which is a group of community members who work in ag, to make sure that your content is meeting the needs of future employers of the workspace, making sure that your classes are getting your students ready for future careers. I have created a community-based unit that gets students to interact with community members and different organizations in the community. So in my floral design class, we have a Valentine's unit where we talk about floral waste a little bit, and I'm having students create a project where they create an action plan to redirect flowers that wouldn't be used, to rearrange them and give them to people in hospice or hospitals or nursing homes to hopefully give the flowers more life and also get the students involved in their local community. It's also important as teachers to apply for grants and find as many grants as you can so that you have funding for all of your educational experiences. I have learned about a couple of grants through courses I've taken and also through professional development. They can be as specific as for specifically funding a school apiary for beekeeping to equipment grant for anything you would need in your ag program. So my next question that I'm going to address is talking about the experiential education opportunities I've had at Penn State that have gotten me to where I am to be ready to teach. So at Penn State, I have 3 minors. I'm minoring in entomology, biology, and international agriculture. I want to teach ag, but I also am interested in the environmental science pathway of that, and along with that, biology. So I don't really know where I'll end up teaching, but somewhere in those veins, and these minors have helped me bridge the content gap between all of them to draw connections to any area that I teach in the future. So there are a couple courses that I've taken at Penn State that have gotten me my minors and have helped me bridge those content gaps. One of them was Bio 417, which is an invertebrate zoology course. In this course, I learned all about animals that I didn't even know were animals. Those are all pictures from the class that I took in our labs, and it was really cool to see all of the different animals that exist. And I think it's applicable to teaching ag if I go to a place that has marine aquaculture as part of their program. That would also be applicable. I also took a plant disease course where I learned about different types of diseases and how diseases work. So these pictures on the screen are all disease cycles that talk about how the disease infects a plant, what the symptoms are for the plant, and also how humans can control it. I'm teaching an integrated pest management unit in one of my courses this spring, and so this class has given me a lot of the background for that. I also took a graduate level class in entomology that I made a collection of specimens that was over 200 specimens, and I learned over 100 insect families. And this project got me out into the field, looking through a different lens at the environment around me, and then also taking those insects inside and learning how to curate them, and also what the importance of curation is. So I could see myself using this project as a format for another project for future students. Finally, I took a class about taking action on food security in your community with Melanie Miller-Foster, where I designed a project to create a banner that promotes food security to be hung downtown at 3 dots behind a community garden. This project was really cool because it got me into the community working with organizations like the Downtown Improvement District that I had not previously had connections to. So it was really cool to get into the community, and it was a good example of how I can promote that for future students. Along with my minors, I also have a couple of certifications that will help me in student teaching. So of course, I'm CPR and first aid certified to keep my students safe. I also have a ServSafe food handler certification that will help me in my food science class to make sure everything happening there is safe for students to be around. And finally, I have my safe tractor training instructor certification so that I can help students learn how to drive tractors safely. I've also participated in a couple of professional development opportunities at Penn State. So the first one was through the College of Ed. It was the Bachelet Conference for Intercultural and Intersectional Competence for School Leaders. Here we talked a lot about culturally responsive teaching and how to have your students lead the conversation of diversity in the classroom and having diverse viewpoints and cultures highlighted through your students. I also went to a training for Envirothon coaches that I drew a lot of connections to training for career development events, and I'm excited to put those together in the spring because I will be helping to coach both CDEs and Envirothon. I also attended the AgroScience Inquiry Institute, where I learned from current in-service agriculture educators who were sharing lessons that could be taught to introduce students to the scientific method with hypotheses and data collection and conclusions and the whole research process, but also under the guidelines of an instructor guiding you through the process of inquiry. I also attended the World Food Prize in 2021, where I met worldwide leaders in agriculture that are working to work towards food security. This is Jan Lowe, who won the World Food Prize a couple years before I had been there, but she worked with biofortified sweet potatoes. I also attended the National Association of Agriculture Educators conference a couple weeks ago in Phoenix, where I met teachers from all over the country and got to participate in workshops that I will take into student teaching because they go into different content areas, but also into the pedagogy of being a teacher. Finally, this semester, I've gotten some teaching experience teaching at State High for a couple days consecutively, which was cool because it was taking lessons that I will be teaching in the spring and applying it to real students to get practice. I also taught at my cooperating center one lesson, which was cool because it's the students that I will be teaching in the spring, which got me excited to teach with them and also got them excited to have me teach with them. And I also had a couple jobs that were influential throughout my college experience. So the first one was at Shavers Creek as a naturalist. I took kids on hikes through the woods, and along the way, we learned all about what was happening in the environment around us through bigger concepts of biodiversity and interrelationships and connecting kids to the world around them. Similarly, this past summer, I worked in Boulder, Colorado at Growing Gardens as an educator, where I took the pedagogy that I learned at Shavers Creek and applied it to a farm setting. So I was taking kids to work with bees and goats and picking up bugs along the way. And while I was in Boulder, I also volunteered on another farm that had a Saturday market with flowers that I learned how to arrange for my floral design class. I also worked at the Frost Entomology Museum to create teaching materials like these here, and I can pass this one around now. I also did some outreach through the Frost Connecting with Shavers Creek for Family Science Nights and have helped with curation projects along the way. And this has given me a step into informal education for taking that into the classroom or into environmental centers in the future. I also participated in the seed semester, which was a block semester at Shavers Creek. And through that, I got more experience in informal education with hiking and interpretive trail leaders, as well as like cultural history opportunities. I also participated in the Goals program, where I taught in a school in Raleigh for a week over spring break, and I taught about global agriculture, taking a giant concept of the Sustainable Development Goals and scaling it down to a local level. Through these experiences, I've had chances to teach to diverse learners. I've become globally competent by teaching to students that speak multiple languages and learned from them as they're learning. I also incorporate universal design into my teaching, so having students teach or learn as individuals rather than having to fit into my one way of teaching. I also, going back to the conference that I spoke about, have focused on culturally responsive teaching and teaching through the 3 modalities of kinesthetic, auditory, and visual learners to make sure that no matter how you learn, you're learning the content in my classroom. So going into my third question, how I prepare to maximize my student teaching experience. I am teaching at Derry Area High School with Miss Carly Ripple, and it's in the western part of the state, and I will be teaching mostly horticulture, the horticulture side of ag, and I will be working with about 115 students. At Derry, they have amazing facilities. They have a giant greenhouse and hydroponics. They also have a barn and a food science lab and outdoor spaces that I can use. Carly Ripple, my CT, is my cooperating teacher, is also a past participant of the seed semester, so I'm excited to see how she implements that into her classroom and learn from that. I'm also excited to add some global opportunities into the classroom because there's no global agriculture class. I'm excited to integrate it into the classes that I'm teaching. So in the spring, this is what the units look like. So each color is a different class that I'll be teaching, and each shade is a different unit. Down the left is the weeks that I'll be teaching, and each week I'll be adding on another course throughout. And this is the same schedule, but broken down by day or into my daily schedule. So first period will be food science all the way through 8th period of plant science. And that's my daily bell schedule. And then I've taken all of the lesson plans that I've created this semester and linked them into a master calendar. That's a little bit messy because there's a lot of lesson plans, but it'll be easy to access everything I'm doing that day. So to stay organized with that messy calendar, I have leaned on my Google Drive. So I have a folder for student teaching with all of my classes. And then in each class, I have a folder for each unit. And in each unit, I have a folder for each lesson. And in each lesson folder, I have all the materials, including the lesson plan that I will need. Going into student teaching, I am bringing some of my strengths. So I think I'm pretty authentic. I have gotten that feedback from my peers while teaching in our labs this semester. I bring myself into my lessons, which I think is important when teaching with high schoolers, because if you don't, they'll see right through you and it'll be hard to gain their respect. I'm also creative. I also bring that into my lesson plans, teaching to continuously spark interest so that students are always engaged in my lessons. Again, going back to my teaching philosophy, getting students out of their seats and doing as many creative activities as possible. I also would say I have a strong work ethic. I don't like to produce work that I'm not proud of, which then gets a little bit into perfectionism, which is something that I'm working on, but I'm usually pretty proud of the work that I produce. I also have some goals going into student teaching. I am excited to foster a collaborative classroom culture. So making sure that students feel welcome to share their voices and to help lead their learning. I'm having a two-way stream of conversation. I'm also excited to grow my communication skill set. So being clear in my instruction in my lessons, as well as contacting parents and getting out into the community and building that network in the local community as well. I'm also excited to make reflection a habit. I am good at reflecting, but it's not consistent yet. And I'm excited to reflect after each lesson so that I can improve those for future times that I teach it, and also reflect over the semester to see how I grow. I am also excited to hopefully ask for help. This is an experience that I've never been through, but I have a lot of mentors along the way, and all of you have helped mentor me through the last 3 years. And I'm thankful that I have you all to help me get through the next however many. And I also want to say thank you to my peers. I know that we've all come from varying levels of ag experience, but I think we all together make a good group with different viewpoints and learn from each other really nicely. So thank you.
I was questioning whether you're going to be on time. You did it right on the notes. Perfect. Thank you, Celia. Celia, I want to ask you a question. Full disclosure that I have not answered myself, that I struggle with all the time professionally, which is I also speak the language of environmental education and agricultural education. I would like for you to tell me how we can help bridge slash do better with those two camps and working with and talking with each other. Very often they're siloed in their environmentalists and agriculturalists, sometimes siloed in their camps around their thoughts and opinions. How do we do better to bridge those two communities?
I have thought a lot about this over the last couple of years, just through all of my classes that I've taken. I've taken a lot for ag and I've taken a lot for environmental science, but I've kind of had to make the connections between them myself. But I think it all goes back to the concept of earth education, which is actually the name of my blog, if you'd like to follow it, to follow my student teaching experience. But the concept of earth education, where environmental education is caring for the earth, and also agriculture education is learning how to use the earth productively and also sustainably so that we can continue using it to feed people. And I think pointing that out to both groups is important to start bridging the gap, at least. Yeah.
I want to first say thank you. I love how your journey through ag took you to so many different experiences. And so with that, being a non-traditional student in this space, what advantages do you think your experiences have provided you or will guide you with recruiting those students and getting them excited?
Yeah, so starting with the recruitment part, I think that I can empathize with students that are not already in ag, because I did not come from an ag background, but I've found the value in educating about it. So I can come to students from that perspective to hopefully show them that agriculture is important so that we can all eat food and be alive. Can you repeat the first half?
Yeah,
also?
so really just how has your experience as a non-traditional student, do you think that will empower you to recruit students?
So also at Penn State, because I didn't know what supervised agricultural experiences are or were before coming to Penn State, and I didn't know much beyond the concept of FFA, I got to learn that at Penn State. So I came into it from fresh eyes rather than from how one teacher may have taught me it. So I was able to take the parts that I saw as the most valuable and really like dig into those from a fresh perspective. And I think bringing that fresh perspective will be important to hopefully recruit students that were in ag, but also students that do not have an ag background.
And if I can ask you one more follow-up to that, have you ever considered in your prospective ag education journey, getting involved in social justice issues around sustainability, with just listening to some of the things that you're passionate about?
Yes. I think it's important to bring students into that as well, but I think that to bring students into it, you need to be involved in it yourself first. So just being aware of what's happening in the world around you is really a really important first step for that.
I think you said something very important. You said cultural competency, right? And I love that you said I was able to take my experiences and see it through someone else's eyes. So that's my TED Talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah. Dr. Foster.
Oh, Celia, I have two questions for you.
Okay.
Ready? First one, I want you to tell me, what does Ag Ed for All mean to you?
Well, Ag Ed for All means that all students have a place in an ag program. Everyone eats food, everyone wears clothes, and that comes from agriculture, which means that everyone has the right to learn about where those things come from. And Ag Ed for All just encompasses that.
Okay. Now I want you to get to show off your skills here. You know, we believe in comprehensive school-based ag education. Did a great job of showing that framework of the three components. I'd like you to teach the audience an example of a learning activity that intersects or transcends all three of those components. So I'd like for you to describe a specific learning activity that you shows how you would have it occur in the classroom, through FFA, and through SAE, intersecting all three components.
So can I use an example that I'm teaching?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm teaching a maple unit both in my food science class and then also as a component of my forestry unit in my natural resources class. And this unit will talk about the history of maple sugaring as well as the process of doing so. And we will actually harvest sap from the sugar bush that we have at the school and boil it down into syrup. So in the classroom, we're learning about the content, the background of what goes into maple sugaring, and we're also having a hands-on experience of tapping trees and boiling the sap down. For SAE, students could take this a step further and create an entrepreneurship project where they are taking the syrup that we make or taking syrup from trees at their house or somewhere that they find in the community and packaging it and promoting it and marketing it and selling it eventually for their SAE project. And finally, for FFA, this goes into the environment and natural resources CDE, getting students ready with content so that they're learning this in the classroom and they're not studying a ton of extra material outside of the classroom.
Thank you.
Yes,
We
Laura.
wait questions in the chat from the online folks. Any more face-to-face folks like to ask a question?
Just, I want to know something you've learned about yourself doing, you know, there's a lot, you've done an amazing amount of work, but like when you think of your Celia-ness, what have you done?
Well, I think I have learned to be more confident, and that just came with all of the teaching experiences that I've had, and through that I've been able to show my Celia-ness in my teaching. So I think just gaining that confidence has been really impactful.
I have a quick one, maybe two-part question.
Okay.
One, do you think it is your intent and goal to become a school-based ag educator?
Maybe.
Okay.
So I go back and forth with that. I could see myself in the classroom, but I could also see myself working in some type of informal education experience. I think realistically, I'll probably do forms of both eventually.
So the second part, which was dependent on the first part, is there anything we can do to solidify the answer into just a yes?
Can I get back to you on that? Yeah.
I have a question for you. Good job on your presentation.
Thank you.
And I especially loved the SketchUp model you made of the outdoor classroom. And I'd love to hear, like you were talking to an administrator. Could you just talk a little bit about the year-round value of a facility like that? Because I think it's really unique, and I like seeing your vision for including that. So how do you use that year-round?
Yeah, so I think it's easier to explain the benefits when the weather is nice out because students can go outside and use the space, not only ag students, but also students in other courses that are just using the learning space, maybe not the raised beds, but maybe the raised beds through some type of collaborative process or lesson. I think it can also be used year round when talking about cover crops and overwintering with the raised beds, talking about what happens to farm fields whenever it's winter and they're not growing crops. So getting into that side of it a little bit.
So Celia, you had an ideal program, you had everybody starting with AFNR, and then your 3 pathways, and then a global agriculture course at the end. So if I counted correctly, that's a total of 8 courses in your ideal program. So my question to you, and I think it's going to be interesting to know there, maybe multi-pronged. First part of it is, do you plan to pursue state funding for your program? Are you going to be an approved program with that ideal program that you outlined for us?
So in my ideal program, I would also have multiple teachers. I see a lot of value in collaborating with other educators, both for problems that arise, but also for covering content areas. Through the ideal curriculum, I chose concepts that I was more familiar with, but I also wanted to cover like basic woodworking skills throughout other classes, throughout the curriculum, and also in the introduction class.
So what you're telling me is that your scope and sequence would include additional courses beyond what you shared with us today,
Yes.
so that your students have the opportunity to take the total number of hours required.
Correct.
And in a 4-year program, just off the top of your head, you know how many hours that is?
1,320 hours.
Very good.
Off the top of my head, if I had to
Off the top of your
think.
head. Thank you for explaining a little more about your scope and sequence and what that might look like. I appreciate it.
Questions? Entertain one or two. If not, thank you, Celia, for ending us off with a bang.